What the f... Hello there. My name's Charles Ray Dawson. I'm a sales manager and associate broker for ProStar Realty. This is the Unnamed Real Estate Podcast, episode 55, and I'm suffering the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. This weekend was a big weekend for a lot of people. It's a weekend that a lot of us had been looking forward to. It was a weekend full of excitement and anticipation and an utter letdown. I'm sitting there over at Friends this weekend, waiting for sports ball to get out of my way because I had received news that sometime during the third quarter, we were going to receive the trailer for the new Rings of Power television show coming out on Amazon, hosted by the Dark Lord Jeff Bezos. Yeah, that's his name, right? And it was really, really uneventful. Now, I'd been led up to this whole thing because I'd read the Vanity Fair article. A little bit of background. I was a geek before geek was being cool. All right. I was a nerd before they'd come out with the movie Revenge of the Nerds. And then because of my unfortunate last name and the last name of one of the characters in that movie and the fact that I was in high school at the time, let's just say I have a little residual drama in my life, a little scarring, a little emotional difficulty. All right, about my inner geekdom. Now, I'm not going to sit here and start flashing geek cred or anything like that at anybody else because I know there's a lot of people who are really more involved in these things than I am. I've channeled my ability to obsess over a topic off to other things besides Lord of the Rings and Star Trek, and the ability to recite the stats of every mech that ever came out in the 3025 BattleTech mech manual. All right, I've moved it on to real estate, all right, putting my colossal powers to use for the forces of good. But that doesn't mean I still don't go back and love the old stuff. So over the course of a few years, I have watched, trust me, I'm getting around to real estate on this. I have watched the various loves of my youth get perverted by that Mordor on the Pacific we call Hollywood and do things to the intellectual property, the IP, of these great stories. And after a little while, you just really get used to it, right? When the Kelvin timeline of Star Trek came out, I watched the first movie. And within possibly the first 50 seconds of it, felt the sinking in my gut and went downhill from there. When the latest trilogy of Star Wars came out, that was a bitter war for my soul. Watched the first movie, hated it. Wasn't going to watch the second movie. Then watched Rogue One. It gave me hope again. It really was the new hope. Then the next movie comes out, and I very rarely do I ever just randomly get up and start wandering around the theater. But on that one, it's like, I've got to go to the bathroom. Oh, I really want some juicy fruit candies, or just. And because of that, never watched Solo when it came out. I watched Solo on the flight back from London once because it was free and it's a long damn flight. So I'm well used to people just, doing these things. So when the new trailer for The Lord of the Rings, do you call it a television show or do you call it a movie? It's going to be episodic. It's going to be on Amazon Prime. Let's just call it the show. I'd seen the Vanity Fair article. My inner geek was sort of outraged at that's not that character. That's not that character. And just before anybody mentally goes there, I'm not talking about the color, complexion, or physical characteristics, except for one person, of any of the characters depicted in any of these things. I'm just talking about what they do to the characters, all right, and how they're changing the characters up, and actually, in certain cases, destroying an entire character arc that literally lasts 3 ages, 4 ages, 3 ages, all right, for the big payoff that you see in the books, the Lord of the Rings trilogy. and was handled very deftly in the Lord of the Rings movie. And then they just, oh no, we're going to change that character up early on and completely destroy that person's character arc. You see that. They did it to Luke Skywalker. Completely nuke his character arc that they built up over all this time. So, hey, we can make what we want to make at the end. So, I watched the trailer, and the first words out of my mouth, mentally, my little soul-crushing cry of anguish was, what the fuck? And I didn't say anything. I got up and I walked out of the room. I went out onto the back porch. I pulled out my Facebook, and I went to a Facebook fan page, and I posted exactly that. I put the little squiggles in so I didn't actually use profanity, like they used to do in cartoons and everything. And bam, we're done. By the time I got back in and sat back down at the couch, that post had already been deleted. I caught my first freaking ban I've ever gotten on. And it's not a Facebook ban, all right? It's just a page ban, all right? So it's like I'm not a true veteran of the Facebook wars until you take a ban, and I'm really trying to avoid that. And that's just the way that is. The next couple days, though, the internets blew up. And we're not just talking the Twitter internet stuff. We're not just talking the Facebook, although that Facebook page did turn into a holy war for quite some time. I later learned out that Facebook page is actually being sponsored by Amazon. So this entire time I thought this page was this grouping of people who liked the same fandom, all getting together to compare ideas and quotes and this and that and the other thing. And they have some true scholars on that side. The entire time it was a Amazon Prime front, a Potemkin village, a Potemkin Facebook page to promote their product. Makes me feel a little dirty, to be honest with you. But what happened on YouTube is everybody and their dog started commenting on the trailer. And they come in there, and after a little while, I realized, you know what? This is just sort of clickbait. Just what we saw a couple weeks earlier with Joe Rogan. Suddenly, people who have never ever heard of Joe Rogan before, or maybe just heard him in passing, are suddenly doing entire YouTube shows about Joe Rogan. Love him, hate him, don't know who he is. All right. Everybody's was going on to that, right? Because the Facebook economy, our news economy, is all about eyeballs on screens. It's all clickbait. I was not going to talk about this episode. All right. This is a real estate show. All right. I sat there, did my little rants. All right. Smothered my dark heart, said, okay, yeah, they're destroying another little bit of your childhood, deal with it, and moved on. And I had a show, all right? I had a really good show based on something that actually happened this week, all right? And we'll probably deal with it next week, all right? And we're going to discuss how to understand I don't actually have it here, but how to understand when you finally get a house under contract and then this lender sends you this piece of paper that says you're going to owe $64 gazillion. Right? And a lot of points, this is where buyers have a complete panic attack. That was going to be this show. Right? But I had another what the moment. Because one of my good viewers, right, you're all good. This one's just better than you, sends me a news article, all right, and going, I'd really like you to talk about this episode, all right? And I read the headline, Key Indicator Hints America is Headed for Its Worst Real Estate Crash in History. And the first words out of my mouth were, what the f***? All right? And my second thought out of my mind was, are you people not paying attention to my show? What the f***? Seriously, how many times do I have to say we're not going into a crash? I'm so getting a lot of use out of that editorial bleep on this episode. I hope nobody's listening to your earphones. You're going to be deaf after this, right? Because this article, Key Indicator Hints America is Headed for Its Worst Real Estate Crash in History, in the show notes below if you want to read it. Unlike other people, I actually reference my sources, all right, by a gentleman by the name of Justin Haskins, all right? So let's talk about Justin Haskins, and let's talk about the Federalist, All right. Federalist is a publication. I think it's only on the internets and might actually be published, in dead tree copies out there somewhere. But these guys are of a conservative libertarian bent. I'm on board with that. All right. When it comes to fiscal issues, I tend to get really, really conservative and libertarian on these things. But as I read the article, and it comes up to, I'd say roughly about 2 pages printed out, because remember, you can't count the cover sheet. This one only goes halfway, and this has got some stuff in that. So we're talking about two pages. The gods are striking me down right now. They apparently don't want me to have light in my life either. They don't want me to have decent fandom to follow, and they don't want me to have light while I do my shows. So Justin Haskins here, all right, February 16th, 2022, all right, writes this article, all right, saying that there's a key indicator. And so I read the article. What is the key indicator? Have the swallows not returned to Capistrano? Is Mount Vesuvius starting to smoke again? Or the Three Sisters earthquake chain in Oregon foretelling doom? Google up that last one. It's actually pretty scary. And I read it. And his entire argument boils down to prices are high. Prices are really high. Prices have been this high before, and there's been a crash. You're correct. Prices have crashed after a high. This is, how these things work. Right? He doesn't say anything about this one. Right? It's almost like one of those. I drove a car once at 55 miles an hour, got into an accident. So every time I start driving 55, I know I'm just going to get another accident. I have covered over many, 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 many episodes. Many episodes. I started going through the emos, trying to find the graphic. So once again, the fool's finger waggling back towards the fire can sit there and explain to you guys, all right, the crash that happened in 08 didn't happen in 08. It started in 06. All right. And he sits there. And if you actually critically read his article, he keeps throwing dates at you and doesn't realize that the dates that he's throwing at you are overlapping in the wrong way. All right. He sits here, and ultimately, the entire purpose of his article, all right, we'll just start with the highlights, all right? Although it is impossible to predict economic crashes with certainty, a key economic indicator suggests the U.S. housing market is on the verge of an unprecedented crash, one that could end up being the biggest in American history. And then he goes in, following the 2008 stock and real estate market crashes, the Federal Reserve kept pumping money into the economy. That is correct. They were doing that in 08. Right? I don't know what that paragraph even exists in there, right? He's talking about the crash 08 crash that happened. And he's talking about all these things after the fact, like they caused the fact, all right? Nice thing about living in our universe, all right? We travel through time. We start here. We end here. We're all going to end if you haven't figured that out yet. But it keeps going linearly in the same direction. Nobody has ever proven that anything that happens after a period of time actually affected it before that, right? That's not the way time works, people. All right? And it's just going to quantitative easing, government takeover, stimulus checks, government welfare programs that followed. That was note that term, government welfare programs. All right, that followed. That was a Fed working in conjunction with Congress and the White House needed to prop up the economy to keep it from sliding completely off the cliff. All right, yeah. And he talks about one of the primary tools was keeping interest rates low. So he goes on for page after page after page talking about interest rates and government spending and all these things that somehow magically backed up through time to cause the crash. Right? And he even wraps it up with, when interest rates are kept extremely low, people can afford to take on more debt because the monthly payment costs less. As a result, sellers increase their prices. No, not really. It means that the sellers are capable of increasing their prices, all right, because they can ask more because there are more willing, ready, and able buyers to hit that price point, all right. But that's not the direct result. I can sit there and say, because of our incredibly low prices and everything like that, I will sell you this iPhone 6 that's only about 7 years old for the low price of $10,397.65. And somebody out there has a credit card that they could swipe and buy this thing from me. Any takers? No. Why? Because that price is useless. That price is non-realistic. All right. The only reason why somebody would pay that price for this phone right now, if they had incredibly low interest rates to buy this phone right now, all right, is if it's 300 years from now and there's some collector, right, and they're probably going to be buying it in Bitcoin. But we go through, we continue to keep going through this article, and it talks about how pricings have gone up, all right, that houses have gone up, nationally apparently it was 17% year over year, which is high. Right? I'm not saying that's not high, but he keeps saying it's because of the low interest rates. It's because of the low interest rates. It's because of the low interest rates and reckless federal spending. So he also discussed, bottom of the page here, that the bubble that developed between 2002 and 2007 peaked at a 47% price increase before plummeting by 20%. All right, from 2007 to the first quarter of 2009. Right. Accurate numbers. All right. And then he says, if we see the similar pattern emerge for the bubble that has been developing since roughly 2012, right, then we can see housing prices drop by 30 to 40% over a 2-year period. I'm not sure how he extrapolates a 20% drop from 07 to 09, all right, to a 30 to 40% drop in the 2 years from here. That's one of those things I'd like to have seen him show the math on that. But a growth from 2012 to 2022 is a 10-year growth. Right? The charts show how underpriced we were, right? And how we had actually slid below what would have been a normal 2.5% appreciation of property. Right. A good period of time there is us playing catch up. Right. So I'm not doing a proper fisking of this. I'm not going into this as great details as I'd like to on this, right? But to wrap it up, I really want to explain something that I see in a lot of these articles. And it's not just clickbait. It's not just, I got to write 500 words that's going to get 10,000 people clicking on this. So I'm going to come up with like the super headline that's going to be clicking. All right. We know this. We've seen this for years. All right. For you people over the age of 50 who used to watch TV. All right. Let me see if this rings a bell. The hidden killer lurking in your bathroom. Do you have it? But first, the numbers. We've seen this before, right? This is something that the media has been doing possibly forever. I'm pretty sure somewhere out there's going to be some archaeologist who's going to be digging up a Babylonian tomb, right? And on that thing, there's going to be a papyrus scroll, and it's going to have a clickbait headline, barley. Is it bad for you? Do the gods forbid it? All right. So to wrap up this particular article that set me off, all right? As painful as such a correction would be, it is likely necessary. The price increases we've been seeing in recent years are primarily the result of inflation and reckless monetary policy, not real economic growth. Mr. Haskins, we did not have real inflation until a couple months ago. It did not start until June, August when we started seeing tape up. During this entire time period, if anything, inflation being too low was the problem, right? So let's not start claiming inflation is suddenly the issue on this, right? Reckless monetary policy, completely on board with that argument. We can argue about reckless monetary policy all frickin' day long. Right? And we can talk about what's not real economic growth. We have had periods of real economic growth during that time period. We've also had periods of where we didn't have real economic growth because basically people are moving the numbers around and making it look like we're going somewhere when we're really not. I will completely agree with both of those freaking statements. All right? But it's his last line here that really gives it away. Regardless of what the Fed does in the short term, it is clear that America's disastrous monetary policy chickens are coming home to roost. Prepare accordingly. Right, so, after that point, I did some research on Mr. Haskins here, and I realized he has an axe to grind when it comes to modern modern monetary policy, the way the economy is handled. Like I said, he is a conservative writer, obviously. He is actually the author of a book called The Great Reset, Joe Biden and the Rise of 21st Century Fascism. I'm getting so sick of that word. You know, most people would know a real fascist if they drove a frickin' Panzer through their garden. All right, but he's also the director of the Socialism Research Center at the Heartland Institute. So he's obviously has an axe to grind. He does not like modern monetary policies. He does not like modern government spending. All right. But what he's decided to do is he's decided to come out, grab something that's near and dear to everybody's heart, ultimately their home, and make them afraid. And try to gin up that fear and then direct them to, as a solution to their fear, follow his politics. If you could, start looking at the world around you and see if there's anybody else out there, right? Who's trying to gin up fear to get you to follow their politics. Right? I really try to keep this off a political channel. Maybe one of these days I will start my own political channel, right? But unfortunately, politics permeates everything right now. And this is a gentleman who's trying to gin up fear of the real estate market, all right, to get clickbait, to push his own ideology, which is, hey, let's have a sound, sane monetary policy. Something that I support. Right? I completely support his goal. I just don't like the way he's going about doing it. All right? We're better than this. We should be better than this. And if you're afraid the unwashed masses can't understand what you're explaining to them, either figure out how to say it better, or let's start working on educating the populace. So, to rebut what we're going on in this, all right? Like I said, this is the part that I've been carrying on for over a year now. I am constantly having this conversation, all right? Yes, housing is going up. The primary reason that we have housing going up is not rank speculation like we had in 2005. The reason why we have housing going up is not only do we have demand being increased by these low interest rates, right, but we don't have enough houses out there to house people. Right? Why is that? Because builders did not build during the crash. People still had children. All right? Those children need a roof over their head. So they went out to try to find a house to put those kids in. All right? And they can't afford one because they don't exist. All right? We have zoning laws, which are insane. All right? We have NIMBY going on. We have restrictions on growth. California is migrating, all right, and leaving because of their policies, all right, and some of them are staying here in Arizona. All right, that's the primary thing. Let me read you these numbers real quick. All right, normally I do a nice formal numbers thing, but I wanted to work it into the routine. All right, February 16, 2022. Actives this week are 4,527. That's down 81 from the week before. Our new listings actually went down also, 2,196. Our pendings are 1,909, down 247. Our under contracts looking backups are at 1,129, down 4. Contracts looking with a buyer contingency on them are at 88, up 22, which means people are starting to accept those offers more. Back on markets are 626. You know, I never actually put that on my normal list, but I'm just going right through my personal list here. Closings were 1,995, right, up 435, and coming soon is 937. What's the big number here? Our active listings are 4,527, right? We're dropping, we've been dropping consistently, all right? Listings are still coming on. This is our first drop in listings in quite some time, right? But houses are still being sold. We still have buyers out there. They still qualify for loans. They are still trying to buy these houses, and we don't have enough houses getting transacted over from point A to point B, all right, for new people coming in there to find existing houses. All right? This is where we're at. This is what's ultimately driving the bottle. This is a supply issue. Right. Prices are going up because of supply, and that's not going to change anytime soon. We're still looking at 12 to 14 months out from a contract, all right, to a house being built. This is not like a normal market like that, where a farmer has 50 tons of corn in the silo out back, and he's sitting there watching the market, and when he sees that price goes up, he decides to dump it on the market and lock in that price. Or, to use another example, oil is breaking $100 a barrel, if it hasn't already. They're talking it might hit $150. How do we get oil back on the market to bring that price down? Well, you don't just go and turn on the faucet and suddenly have oil appear. You have to drill for that. You have to pipe it. You have to deliver it to the refineries. It's not an instantaneous process. But we do have countries out there like Saudi Arabia. They just literally just put that sucker on idle. All right. So if they wanted to dump on the market, they could dump on the market by flipping a switch. In some cases, literally. You can't do that with houses. Right? We can't just instantly 5,000 houses out on the West Valley to make up for the loss that we have, right? So every time, what I meant to say on this whole thing, right, is ultimately when you see a clickbait article, right, and there's hundreds of clickbait articles out there on various things, do try to realize whatever they're doing, their primary reason for telling you this is not to inform you. It's to make money off your dumb, ignorant ass. All right. That's what they're trying to do with these things. Now, you people in other industries besides real estate, you might sit there and read an article on your own industry and suddenly realize, hey, wait a minute. NPR's lying to me. This is completely wrong. I was there. I'm in this industry. I know what's going on. And then for some reason, people will turn the page, back when we used to turn pages, or click on the next article, and then completely believe what these people are telling you about something else. Right? There's a word for this. This is the word. The reason why I showed you the word is because I could not come up with that word on the fly while I was talking about them. Right? But people forget that, there's an old saying, people are conservative about whatever they know best. Right? People are more likely to pick out the absolute bullshit in an article, all right, about something that they know best, right? So if you're a nurse and you're reading an article about nursing and you sit there going, well, that's complete bullshit, and you click on the next article out there, don't suddenly believe the article the exact same people are telling you about real estate or cars or forestry or whatever, right? So long story short, that's the end of this episode. I will try to get back onto my normal tack of trying to educate you people about real estate. But apparently, sometimes you just got to do a little bit of defensive work, right, to shore up, reinforce the conversation that you've been having. And this was just one of those. So I really, really, really hope Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power is good. I really want it to be everything that it can be. All right. Just like I really wanted the next trilogy of Star Wars, or the new Star Trek, or The Hobbit, or Wheel of Time. Witcher did good. Didn't actually watch The Witcher, but I love The Witcher. Or any of the other things that these guys decide to remake. I just really, really hope it's going to be, but it won't be. But real estate doesn't have to be that way. Thank you very much for listening to my show. You guys have a great weekend. I'll talk to you.